Alrighty, so I'm gonna react to a video by Mr. Reagan, and it's called "Trump Just Took Over the World." I think this is probably in relation to the tariff topic, so we're gonna give it a watch.
Donald Trump just took over the world, and the tariff plan is not what you think.
Mr. Reagan.
All right, before we start, I've got a great new sponsor for the show, Gold Co. If you want to diversify your portfolio, protect your savings, safeguard your retirement.
Real quick, right off the top, would have been probably good if you could have got a higher resolution version of the logo, but probably not a big deal.
Try investing in gold with Gold Co. Go to MrReaganLikesGold.com or call 844-696-GOLD or click on the link in the description below. I love these.
Did he lose weight in this one here? He looks like he lost weight in that one.
Gold or click on the link in the description below. I love these tariffs, but no one seems to understand them. To understand what Trump is doing, you just have to do one thing. Read his book, The Art of the Deal. It's all right in there for you. Anyone can read it. Anyone can understand exactly what Donald Trump is doing. And so what is it that he's doing? What is this tariff plan really? Well, it's a bluff, but also it's not a bluff. What do I mean by that? To understand this, let's just go over the basics very quickly. What is a tariff? A tariff is simply a tax on imported goods typically imposed in order to persuade citizens to buy domestically produced versions of a particular product. So let's say that the Japanese wanted to persuade Japanese citizens to buy locally produced Japanese rice. But let's also say, hypothetically, that the US can produce rice much cheaper than they produce it in Japan because of large-scale farming. But like I said, Japan wants the Japanese people to buy their own locally grown rice to support local Japanese farmers. So Japan's government imposes a tax on all US rice imported into Japan. This is a tariff. And this, of course, is a real example. Japan really does this, and the tariff on rice imported into Japan is insane. The tariff is an eye-watering 778%. So if a grocery store chain in Japan wants to sell American rice and they import $1 million worth of it, because of the tax, they'd end up spending $8,780,000 for the rice, and $7,780,000 of that money would go to the Japanese government. Now, this is a massive oversimplification.
Is that the rice cartel? Anyway.
And it's not precisely accurate, but it illustrates the point. So Trump comes out with this massive reciprocal tariff plan, and he's essentially saying, if you tax us...
If you hate constantly being swarmed by ads, you need to download Pi. It's a free
Chrome
extension that
ironic.
blocks ads on
An
all
ad
your
for
favorite
an ad
sites.
blocker.
It even blocks ads that you didn't
Kind
even
of
know were
ironic.
ads.
We are going to tax you. Sounds pretty fair, right?
The tariffs will be not a full reciprocal. I could have done that, yes, but it would have been tough for a lot of countries who didn't want to do that. I'd like to see the chart if you have it. China, first row. China, 67%. That's tariffs, currency manipulation, and trade barriers. So it's 67%, so we're going to be charging a discounted reciprocal tariff of 34%. I think, in other words, they charge us, we charge them less. So how can anybody be upset?
But I don't think that Trump's intentions are quite as simple as making trade fair for the US, protecting American businesses, and raking in trillions through these newly imposed tariffs. I think that Donald Trump's plan is actually a bit more nuanced than this, and it is absolute genius. I'll explain what I think is going on here in one moment. First, of course, I have to talk about my amazing sponsor. Elon Musk is again stirring the pot when he said he wants to live stream an audit of Fort Knox. Boy, would that be interesting. Did you know that the US government has 261.6 million troy ounces of gold stockpiled at Fort Knox? And that gold is still valued at the 1970s era rate of $42.22 an ounce. Now,
is there a difference between a troy ounce and a regular ounce? Did I hear a troy ounce? Did I hear that correctly?
If you haven't checked lately, gold is now nearing $3,000 an ounce. According to Fortune, the Wall Street Journal, and others, a repricing of that gold could send the gold markets even higher proving that gold is not some old, outdated asset. Now, I have known that buying gold helps protect my savings, and if you're looking to diversify like I am, well then I want you to head over to MrReaganLikesGold.com. You'll get a free gold and silver kit from my partners over at Goldco. Goldco is a great company that I trust. You could also qualify for an up to 10% instant match in bonus silver. Not a bad deal at all. Head over to MrReaganLikesGold.com. That's MrReaganLikesGold.com. So what is Trump's plan? What is he really up to? And why did I title this video, Trump Just Took Over the World? Well, as I said at the start of this video, it's all spelled out clearly in his book, The Art of the Deal. In this book, Trump explains that in order to win any negotiation, you just need two things. One, you have to have something that the other party wants, and hopefully more than how much you want what they've got. And two, you've got to be willing to walk away without a deal. And if you've got those two things going for you, well, you are unstoppable. But here's where the genius part comes in. Trump doesn't necessarily want the same thing from every country. For some countries, for most countries probably, he wants reduced tariffs, But for other countries, he may want military cooperation or geopolitical concessions. Maybe he wants to negotiate a peace treaty.
The international trading system consists of a web of relationships, military, economic, political. One cannot take a single aspect in isolation. This is how President Trump sees the world, not as a zero-sum game, but as interlinkages that can be reordered to advance the interest of the American people.
The point is that with these new tariffs, Trump has given the United States something amazing. He's given us leverage.
I say this because I know it's what President Trump believes. He believes three things. One, it is a good source of revenues. Two, it protects our important industries and the employees. And three, he's added the third leg to the stool, and he uses it for negotiating. Mm-hmm.
Not just leverage, but massive leverage. Because of these tariffs, anything Trump wants, Trump gets. These tariffs are the genie in the lamp. They give Donald Trump one wish for every country in the world. UK, stop regulating speech on social media. We'll lower the tariffs. Done. Iran, sign this nuclear weapons deal, and you know what? We'll lower the tariffs. Done. Mexico, go fund the border wall, and we will lower the tariffs. Done. But for most countries, the leverage that Donald Trump has created will be used to reduce or remove their tariffs on us or their burdensome regulations against us. This is massively beneficial, not only for our country, but for every country in the world, even those who have imposed tariffs upon us, because free trade will give the citizens of these countries more opportunities for better, cheaper products. And so in this sense, the tariffs are kind of a bluff. Trump has presented them principally as a way to bring industry back.
I don't know if I'm completely bought into the free trade idea. I think I used to be back in school when I didn't have as many different perspectives or ideas presented in a way that made sense, or I just didn't I didn't yet hear as much about this topic. I think now, based on things that I've heard over the past 4 or 5 years or so, I think that I'm definitely more a fan of fair trade than free trade, but then again, maybe it depends on what do these terms mean. But because isn't free trade agreements part of what caused the jobs to leave America and go to China? Because I'm not an economist and I'm not super familiar on what all these terms mean, but I would think that isn't part of what the tariffs are doing more to promote fair trade than free trade, but I could be completely wrong and out to lunch on that.
In the U.S. and to protect American businesses, and they will. But I think the motive of leverage to gain an advantage in negotiations is a far more significant aspect than he's been letting on. But here is the best part, and this is the bit that makes these tariffs not a bluff. If the countries don't want to play ball, if they've got nothing that we want other than the removal of their tariffs and trade barriers against us, and they refuse to lower those, well then, we'll just keep the tariffs on them. This will make us billions of dollars for our U.S. government, and it'll pay for Donald Trump's tax cuts, and it'll help reduce both the debt and the deficit, and this should spur massive growth in our economy.
If it works, it sounds like it would be probably a win-win scenario. Because if I'm understanding this correctly, how Mr. Reagan is laying it out, it's kind of like there's different kind of moving pieces where if you don't win here, you win here. Like, there's always some sort of way that you get some upside, even if it's not necessarily the upside you're shooting for. You still get some level of benefit somehow. Like, you always kind of walk away from the arrangement with some sort of benefit for the effort, or for the way that the agreement shakes out or doesn't shake out, or whatever, however the term goes. So, and another thing is that if this works, and because I don't know for certain, like I've heard something about how, I think, if what I'm hearing is correct, if I've heard correctly, that isn't part of the long-term goal of this whole tariff thing to eventually get rid of income tax. I don't know if that's confirmed or if that was something that's just been said. I could be completely wrong about if that's even the goal or not. Feel free to look into that yourself. But if that is indeed the goal or part of the goal, if Trump pulls this off and does, if he intends to, get rid of income tax, if that is indeed the goal, and it works, then is it fair to say that everybody else is very mad at their own country / government for not doing the same? Because how many people are just kind of used to paying income tax and just kind of figure, well, that's just the way it is. But is it possible that it has to be that way? Is that the only way that things can be done? Or is there an alternative that just hasn't been done? So anyway, it's if they pull all this off, it might be interesting.
U.S. businesses will make more money and grow. Foreign businesses will produce more here in the United States, and that means more jobs and higher pay for everyone. So if this is all true and these amazing things are going to happen because of these tariffs, well, then why are Democrats criticizing them? Even some conservatives, why are they criticizing these tariffs? Well, in order to discuss this, I need to go through a little basic macroeconomic theory. Basic macroeconomic theory proposes that if three guys, guy 1, 2, and 3, they each produce something that they need for their lives themselves. Let's say they each produce milk, they each produce eggs, and they each produce wheat. Well, then the division of time, energy, and resources that it takes to produce all three of these products, they will be sub-optimized and inefficient, and so each will only be able to make just enough of each of these things to survive. But if each of these men specialize, that is, if each of them produces just one of these things, they can optimize production, they can become extremely efficient, and they can produce not only enough for all three men, but a surplus that can then be sold to other men elsewhere. And then these three men can buy, say, luxury goods for their homes. So it's all about...
This is interesting. I don't know if I've heard it explained this way before, but it seems like it makes sense.
And then these three men can buy, say, luxury goods for their homes. So it's all about specialization, optimization, and efficiency. Now, just imagine that each of these men is a country, and that'll give you the basis for macroeconomic theory and the fundamental concept behind globalization. The reason that tariffs are bad is because it reduces our options and it increases prices.
When tariffs get imposed on goods, who actually ends up footing the bill? Well, to put it simply, you do. The purpose of tariffs is to make foreign goods more expensive for you, the consumer. It's a way to disincentivize you from buying those foreign goods and instead shopping domestically.
And so even if you have reciprocal tariffs, the best outcome is that instead of businesses on both sides buying cheap goods and keeping their money for reinvestment and growth, businesses buy expensive goods, but much of that revenue goes to the two governments. And then these governments, they decide what to do with that money. And that's, of course, great for corrupt bureaucrats who want to steal tax money, but it's not great for the people. In this case, things are a little bit different, though, because we have a Trump administration dedicated to the evisceration of corruption in the federal government. And there is...
And so he's going to have to be quite vigilant to continue to prove that, right? So, like, is it fair to say that Doge is going to have to make some serious dents and cuts and, you know, removal of a lot of things? Because right now I don't know if it's only at 80 billion in cuts. I could be wrong on these numbers. But essentially it's probably going to have to be undeniably substantial to help to support the argument, if my understanding is correct.
Some talk of reducing tax rates, thus putting the money drawn from these tariffs right back in the pockets of the American people.
Now, one of the biggest issues may be what to do with the newly anticipated import tariff revenues. It could be $600 billion a year. Now, this would be a tremendous boon to all Americans, to business, and to the goal of a 4% economic growth rate if we cut tax rates across the board. Individual income tax cuts, corporate tax cuts, even cutting the Social Security payroll tax. And by the way, these kinds of additional tax cuts on top of the Trump tax cuts already out there would help, I think, to ease the way or soothe the way towards any short-term damage from the initial effects of the tariffs.
I think that part of this that most people are probably, like the average person is probably going to care about, even just in terms of optics, is if the tax cuts go beyond just that of the wealthy / corporate / business owners. As much as you could probably make an argument from a capitalistic point of view that that could benefit people down the line, because if it is easier and if business owners are able to save more money, then they could potentially reinvest in the business and thus create maybe a better quality or standard of living for the employees, or more jobs for potential employees to emerge, right? But then some people that are more like communistic or socialistic in their mindset, or skeptical of this kind of theory, might say, well, no, they're just going to like keep more for themselves. They're just going to hoard more of the wealth. And for some that may be the case, but like, again, like, to make such a declaration is to speak in absolutes, and also assume that people that get wealth do not want to reinvest their wealth into growing the company further, which I'm not sure if that is wise business practice if you want to have a growing and successful business. And even if you just wanted to increase efficiencies and other things, like if you want to quote-unquote win, wouldn't it make sense to reinvest in the thing that is currently getting you wins? I'm not an expert on any of this, but regardless, just in terms of optics, many people would probably appreciate something that they feel really easily observable on their level, which would be, I'm paying less income tax this year. Awesome. You know, like something that's pretty easily discernible or understandable to the common man, right? Common man or woman, whatever. Is that, like, you know, if you can make cuts to the actual regular average Joe's taxes, right?
How about that? Lots of revenues coming in if all this goes through. Let's cut tax rates with those revenues. Just saying, you know me, never met a tax cut I didn't like.
There is one more reason why economists dislike tariffs, even reciprocal tariffs. It's because by levying tariffs, there is a real danger of sparking a trade war.
Trade wars. They don't involve missiles, tanks, or guns, but they can cause a lot of damage. When farmers in the US started struggling financially in the late 1920s, their representatives in Congress tried to help them with tariffs. And by the time it passed through Congress, the bill was calling for 890 different tariffs to be raised on a huge variety of items. More than 1,000 American economists signed a petition urging
Not the clothespins.
huge variety of items. More than 1,000 American economists signed a petition urging President Herbert Hoover not to sign the bill.
Stretching will not make you flexible, and it will not eliminate your recurring injuries. Stretching will relax your muscles.
They claimed that raising so many tariffs so high would be a major mistake. They predicted that it would harm most Americans once other countries started retaliating with their own tariffs. International outrage was swift. Some countries, including Spain, Mexico, and Canada, struck back with increased tariffs on American goods. U.S. automobiles, iron, and steel exports dropped by over 80%. So, the dangers posed by trade wars today have even greater potential for political destabilization and economic hardship on a global scale.
In the case of...
So my quick, off-the-top, not expert opinion on this is like, so for example, pertaining to this trade war in terms of U.S. versus Canada, so as somebody who's in Canada who is Canadian, my view on this might be a little bit different than other Canadians' views, but like, essentially, like, I see the U.S. as holding a lot of power in this arrangement, and Canada is a little bit lame nowadays. You know, even just like, what do we do? What have we done that's of significance recently? I don't know if there's a whole lot. So, and even just like, what are the cards that we hold in this trade war game here. So like, yeah, you could talk about, you know, natural resources and stuff like that, but like if the US truly unleashes or develops their natural resource utilization, and like, you know, whether like, because I think the only thing where we may have them beat, I assume, is in forestry. That's just based off of something that I heard recently from somebody. I don't know how completely accurate that is, but regardless, like, just because I think when you think Canada, you might think we got a lot of trees. But like, how many trees does the U.S. need year over year? Can they sustain that on their own? I don't know. But when it comes to like natural gas and stuff like that, I'm also not an expert on like what the quantity that the U.S. has compared to Canada. But if they actually develop their natural gas and like drill, then is it possible that they could? Well, because didn't Trump get the U.S. energy independent in his first term? And then I think that changed when Biden was in there. But if that is correct, then couldn't they just do that again? So it's like, I don't see Canada as holding a lot of cards here per se, or a lot of leverage. So not every country necessarily has the necessary leverage to really fight a trade war and win. Or at least, I don't know if they would necessarily last in the long term, but then again, it depends on what specific products and services and materials or resources or whatever you're talking about. And, you know, which country, which time frame. Like, I don't know enough about this stuff really, but
Trump's tariffs, though,
and economic hardship on a global scale.
in the case of Trump's tariffs, though, a trade war is, I think, extremely unlikely. I'd actually go so far as to say it's practically impossible. And this is because Donald Trump implemented tariffs on almost 200 countries all at once. You see, if Trump imposed a tariff on just a few countries, they may talk back and forth between themselves and go, you know what, we're going to fight back. And so maybe a trade war ensues. But 180 countries all at once, I mean, some of them are going to fold immediately. And we are seeing that now.
And how many, like, this might be a bit of an assumption here, but if you're just playing to human psychology, how many countries will fold because they see other countries folding and think, well, if they folded, how much of a chance do we stand? And even if they think that they stand a chance, does that mentally mess with you when you start to see people fall away or fall in line or whatever term, give up, fold, like, psychologically, does that mess with you even just a little bit, even just subconsciously? Does it weaken your resolve just a little bit, chipping away at it? Because if you get down to, okay, we are one of the 20 remaining countries and all of the other ones have folded. Like, this is just me just saying this off the top of my head. Like, how difficult does that make it for those that are remaining, like, to be able to outlast or whatever, right? This is just kind of me just talking, right? But anyway.
And they're going to drop their tariffs. They're going to negotiate with Trump. They're going to give him something that he wants. I mean, some of them are going to fold immediately, and we are seeing that now. And they're going to drop their tariffs. They're going to negotiate with Trump. They're going to give him something that he wants. And when that happens, other countries are going to see these concessions, and they're going to start thinking about a way that they too might strengthen their trade relationship with America and convince Trump to drop the tariffs. And after that, it'll be a race between countries to see who can make deals the fastest. I think Trump is going to get what he wants out of all of this far faster than anyone imagines. Now, in spite of all the bad things that economic theory warns us about tariffs, there are a couple of really good things that tariffs can do. Firstly, reciprocal tariffs can pressure other countries into dropping their tariffs and their other restrictions. And this is, of course, what Donald Trump wants. As I said, Trump is creating leverage. And this is the most obvious use of that leverage. Create free, fair trade between countries and thus create more opportunities for U.S. companies to export goods and increase profits. The other great thing about tariffs, at least in certain circumstances, is the broadening of the variety of U.S. industries and thus the broadening of the variety of new job opportunities for American citizens. In the U.S., we have a massive welfare program. 20% of Americans receive some form of welfare. 20%. Now, why is this? Well, since the 1960s, the US has been shifting from an industrial economy to a knowledge-based economy. That is, we've been shifting from industries like manufacturing, mining, and agriculture to industries like technology, finance, and healthcare. And this has always been viewed as a good thing. The future of America was envisioned to be a Star Trek The Next Generation style utopia where everyone had the equivalent of multiple doctorate degrees and they all listened to opera. But here's the thing. Not everyone in America wants to be a lawyer, and a lot of people actually kind of hate opera.
The future you were promised versus the future you got. It's just find it interesting that he brings up the Star Trek reference, because I made a reference to this thing that Tim Pool talked about, or this concept that I roughly remember Tim Pool talking about probably anywhere from 2+ years ago, something like that. I'm not familiar in the exact timeline, but about kind of this vibe that he portrayed the 90s to be, and that might partly link into what Mr. Reagan's saying here, but I could be a little bit off on that.
Some people like fixing cars for a living. Some people like building houses. Some like fishing or farming or baking. Some people want to work in the forest cutting down trees. Some particularly dumb people even like making YouTube videos.
Oof.
So yeah, the macroeconomic theory states that the making YouTube videos. So yeah, the macroeconomic theory states that the optimal way to produce the best, cheapest goods and provide the best, cheapest services is to specialize. And that certainly makes sense for countries with smaller populations. But in America, our population is huge, 350 million people. And so we have a huge spectrum of people who are best suited to a huge spectrum of jobs. Now, jobs tend to be correlated to IQ. That is, it is believed that people tend to be limited in what they can do by their IQ.
All right, let's look at this here. Life chances, percent population, high risk, uphill battle, keeping up, out ahead, yours to lose. So, like, I've heard this bell curve thing. I don't know if I've ever quite completely understood it, just because I don't think I've really got into analyzing what the term means in totality. But anyway. Okay, so WAIS, IQ. No, I'm not familiar with what the acronym means. WPT score. So is 130 considered... I think... Was Einstein 150 IQ? I could be wrong on that. I'm just kind of guessing based off of what I think I remember hearing. Career potential, training potential. Food service, nurses, aid. Very explicit. So, the only thing is, okay, so career potential. So are these the types of careers based off of these gaps? Mastery, learning, hands-on. So I guess the idea is that this is where most people are, is on this part of the curve. Clerk, teller, police officer, machinist, sales. Interesting. Written materials plus experience. Interesting how there's like some overlap. But I guess that would be the idea, is there might be some fade in, fade out or whatever. College format. You think the college format would be more around here? Or no, also in the US, college and university I think means the same thing. Correct me if I'm wrong. College format, manager, teacher, accountant. Now teacher, this is a debatable one, because is it possible that not everybody is good teachers? So just because you're a teacher does not necessarily mean you are a good teacher. Teacher, accountant. Gathers, infers, own information. Attorney, chemist, executive. Yeah, okay, I just want to take a second on that anyway.
And it's certainly true that some people can achieve great success in fields that on paper they shouldn't be able to do well in at all. But for our purposes, this correlation is helpful, because in my view, if I'm doing something that's extremely difficult for me day in and day out, and I'm not particularly productive and I'm not improving, that's depressing. It does not inspire me to keep going and doing great things, because I'm just trying to do well enough to survive. And that's not a fun life. It's much better to thrive in a career that you're really good at. And ideally, the job challenges you, but in a fun way. And you figure things out, you work hard and constantly triumph over these challenges. So maybe utopia is not everyone being lawyers or doctors. Maybe a utopia is just everybody doing a job that they're best suited to and that they like. And look, there are very few people in America who have such a low IQ that they literally cannot work. These are people with an IQ below 70. I asked Grok to calculate the total percentage of Americans who are so physically or mentally disabled or have such a severe mental illness that they literally cannot work. And the highest estimate that Grok gave me was 2.5%. That is the number of Americans who should be on welfare. Everyone else needs a job that they can thrive in.
So correct me if I'm wrong on the stats here, but just rough math. So that is a 10 times more, or 10 times higher number than it should be, because 2.something% to the 20% or whatever. I'm not going to ask if that's correct because it might just sound more stupid than I already might sound.
And ideally, that they love. The job market should skew in the direction of lower IQ professions because people who are intelligent enough to do something intellectually demanding, they don't always want to do that kind of job. So it makes sense that there would be more people working less intellectually demanding jobs rather than more. And so my point is that you want as many job opportunities as possible, especially in the middle and left-hand side of the IQ graph. Because once you get up to 115 and above, there are really fewer and fewer jobs that can be done at that level, and far fewer people are capable of filling them.
And also with the advent of AI, if that is the correct use of the word, with AI becoming better and better, how much of this top end of the graph, depending on some of the niche positions, are actually being taken out by AI right now? Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but based on what I've heard from different people or podcasts or etc., that is it true that I think Adam was saying this on the Patrick Bet David podcast that at one point truck driver jobs were gonna be considered replaceable or the first to go or something like that. Anyway, but it turns out that instead it was the programming jobs, I believe. As far as I hear, it seems like those are the ones that AI is taking over more. And then Adam was saying it looks like if you're a truck driver, your job's looking pretty safe right now, at least for the time being. I might be slightly misquoting what Adam was saying or implying, but roll with me here. And essentially, so it's like the lower end jobs until they work out the AGI and robotics stuff to work on like the lower level stuff, whether it's like service industry stuff, whether it's literally just like, can you serve this person a burger and fries, robot, versus the write this code to make a, C++ class that executes, etc., series of equations to solve, etc., problems on the fly and iterate and blah, blah, blah. So then it's like that stuff right now, AI is probably more capable of doing than this other stuff. So instead of working bottom up on the bell curve, it's almost kind of working top down on the bell curve. Is that fair to say? And there might be some stuff that's kind of like a little bit on the top, a little bit in the middle, maybe a little bit on the lower end. Depends on really right now. I think it's like how tactile is the job, like in terms of how much do you have to have a physical human doing things. And that's where like AI might not quite absorb as much of the job market, because I mean there is like automation and stuff, like putting bottle caps on the bottles, I assume is probably done by machinery and probably has been for some time. But anyway, so we're going to see how this pans out.
130 to 145, we're talking about engineers, lawyers, doctors, and scientists. Over 145, these guys are like nuclear physicists and theoretical mathematicians. So in America, we really need a lot of jobs that are moderately intellectually demanding or not intellectually demanding at all, and we need very, very few jobs available for the crazy high IQ people. Basically, the job parabola should be to the left of the IQ parabola, but that's not what we see. The job parabola is actually to the right of the IQ parabola, meaning that we have more jobs available for high IQ people than we have high IQ people. That doesn't make any sense, but that is the effect of the Star Trek The Next Generation utopian thinking. Now, in theory, I could be convinced that it's okay to have a significant number of Americans doing jobs that are hypothetically beyond their intellectual capacity. I mean, I am a true optimist. I love an underdog story. And some people are certainly able to perform at a higher level than that which their IQ might indicate. However, I think in many professions, in many industries, the reason for this skewed distribution is not hardworking, creative overachievers who go beyond their potential, but rather DEI. Sometimes people are hired for jobs that they really aren't qualified for. This is a major problem with DEI. This is, of course, a massive problem because if you're working in a group or you're relying on something to get something done and they don't do it well, they don't do it correctly, or they don't do it at all, everyone in the office suffers. And it can even be psychologically traumatizing for the imposter themselves.
Is this a fair statement when it comes to this DEI thing? You get what you pay for. All right, so if you hire somebody based on factors other than their ability to get said job done, then don't be surprised when maybe what you result with is somebody that has those other things but cannot necessarily get said job done, as well as somebody who you'd hire on just their ability to get the job done, right? It's all kind of a basic concept, isn't it? Am I wrong?
When you throw somebody into a career who's not capable of functioning comfortably within that profession, they can suffer immensely. So why don't we just...
Yeah, it's kind of a lose-lose, right? Because then the person feels bad for not being really good at the job or as good as somebody else could be in that position. And then other people suffer, whether it's because the job doesn't get done properly or well or whatever efficiently. And then they might have animosity or dislike towards the person because they got hired for some other reasons, and then the person that got hired for some other reasons, or predominantly or whatever for other reasons, then feels bad or guilty or whatever. Like, isn't it kind of just a lose-lose potentially, and doesn't it just kind of muster up more avoidable animosity and potential bigotry or whatever, you know? Bigotry, that's how you pronounce it, I believe. Anyway.
Just let people do what they're good at. Why don't we just suffer immensely? So why don't we just let people do what they're good at? Why don't we just let people do what they love doing? And I know this all seems like it's a digression from the subject of tariffs, but here's the point. We currently have a very skewed workforce in favor of high-paying jobs for high IQ professionals. But this is totally inappropriate. By bringing back a broader variety of job types, Americans will be better able to find jobs that are perfectly suited to them. It's about creating enough variety of professional opportunities that everyone in America can find a job that they are very well suited to and that they love and that they thrive in. All right, now let's get back to talking about these tariffs. Opportunity jobs, variety of job types. Americans will be better able to find jobs that are perfectly suited to them. It's about creating enough variety of professional opportunities that everyone in America can find a job that they are very well suited to.
And so the idea is that tariffs would help to bring back more job variety. Correct me if I'm wrong, but is that the implication?
And that they love and that they thrive in. All right, now let's get back to talking about these tariffs directly. One of my favorite conservative thinkers, Mr. Thomas Sowell, has spoken out skeptically about the tariffs. Some have even characterized this as being critical of Trump's tariff plan, but that's not exactly right. What Sowell said was that these tariffs might be good, they might be bad, but he's uncertain of what might happen. And so, to me, what he said simply expressed skepticism. I'm not sure I would go so far as to call it criticism.
Thomas Sowell is like super old too. Like from what I hear about Thomas Sowell, he seems good stuff. You know, like if you ever watched the documentary Uncle Tom 1, 2, and there might be the third one out now. I don't know. I'm pretty sure he's in the first two at least. I think, and yeah. So yeah, worth listening to him. I think it's fair to say he seems like he's well spoken and probably quite knowledgeable. I mean, he talks. He's written several books, hasn't he? But yeah. So worth a listen.
Here's the video. I will let you come to your own conclusion.
Now, insofar as he's using these tariffs to get very strategic things settled, and that he is satisfied with that. But if you set off a worldwide trade war, that has a devastating history. Everybody loses because everybody follows suit. And all that happens is that you get a great reduction in international trade. The other, it's disturbing in another sense. Franklin D. Roosevelt, when he was president in the
So Thomas Sowell was born on June 30th, 1930, which makes him 94 years old as of April 22nd, 2025. This dude's been around, like been around in age for a while. And just listen to what he's saying.
Reduction in international trade. The other, it's disturbing in another sense. Franklin D. Roosevelt, when he was president in the 1930s, said that you have to try things, and if they don't work, then you admit it, you abandon that, and you go on to something else, and you try that until you come across something that does work.
He's looking good for 94, man.
Now that's not a bad approach if you are operating within a known system of rules. But if you are the one who's making the rules, then all the other people have no idea what you're going to do next. And that is a formula for having people hang on to their money until they figure out what you're going to do. And when a lot of people hang on to their money, you can get results such as you got during the Great Depression of the 1930s. So if this is just a set of short-run ploys for various limited objectives, limited in time, fine, maybe. But if this is going to be the policy for 4 long years, that you're going to try this, you're going to try that, you're going to try something else, a lot of people are going to wait. I think what happened in the stock market recently, when things came down substantially for quite a while, and I note that various people are holding on to their money before they do anything, because they don't know where this is going to lead.
Now, Mr. Sowell says that a trade war would be bad, and that is true, of course, but I don't think he's seriously considered the likelihood of that, because I just think there's very little chance. Look, as I said before, I think that once one country starts to negotiate, and then a second and a third, a precedent will be set. I think that other countries are obviously going to see this, and it is going to spark a cascade effect, and soon most, if not all countries, will negotiate and capitulate to Donald Trump in some way or another, creating a new era of free and fair trade between nations. Naturally, Democrats...
And there being probably a difference between free trade and fair trade.
Democrats are still going to say that Trump's plan was terrible no matter what happens. And as I said at the top of the show, these guys are all disingenuous. They have all argued for tariffs in the past. But look, this move was genius for Donald Trump. He has granted himself leverage for future negotiations with almost every country in the world. He will increase revenues for the U.S. federal government, and he will broaden the kinds of careers Americans have available for them in the future. Trump now controls the future not only of America, but of most other countries in the world. Trump truly did...
As long as they have a significant reliance on the U.S. market. Is that a fair kind of thing to add on to it, But yeah, this video is worth a watch. And even if you don't agree with all of it, just worth considering, because I think, is it fair to say that a lot of the talk around tariffs is kind of hyperbole? Like, it's all this like kind of flashy headlines with like the one-liner responses or analysis kind of thing, like, this is gonna hurt XYZ consumers, make it hard on XYZ people. Like, how many people on the news are explaining it in this level of depth as like a negotiating tool, and how even if an argument, or not an argument, even if a negotiation or something is not reached to some sort of renegotiating of how they do trade, at the very least you get like some, little bit extra money coming in from the tariffs, and like, has it been explained by a lot of people in the mainstream like this? Because if it was, maybe people might like freak out a little bit less,
Did figure out a way to take over the world. Let me know what you guys think about all of this in the comment section. But of most other countries in the world, Trump truly did figure out a way to take over the world. Let me know what you guys think about all of this in the comment section below. And remember, it's not that our liberal friends are ignorant. It's just they know so much. That is not so. Good night.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars. And it's been said, if we lose that war, and in so doing lose this way of freedom of ours, history will record with the greatest astonishment that those who had the most to lose did the least to prevent its happening. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on Earth.
Reagan was, fair to say, quite the guy, eh? But anyway, what'd you think? It's some good arguments. I think I'm like, because my bias is going to lean, right-wing conservative, more, pro that kind of thinking, and economically, like I'm gonna tend to, agree with Mr. Reagan on probably most things. The only thing is that I think when it comes to some of the statements that he made might be maybe a bit too general, or at least at the current time maybe a bit too general or certain, because when was this released? 12 days ago. Okay, so some of this might have changed or been proven correct or not, or whatever. I'm not familiar with all the details, right? Like, I'm not like sitting here with a checklist, right, of like, oh, you got that one right, So I think like I think that kind of my response with a lot of this is like time will tell, because it feels so easy for everybody to just like grab the CNN headline and be like, oh, orange man bad, in whatever way that they explain that or whatever. But in reality, it's like, is it possible that it could just simply work? But maybe you have to give it time for the strategy to work. But I hope it does work, because then it's going to kind of make everybody have to like realize, hey, maybe he's onto something here. Maybe it's possible. And also, if the goal is to reduce taxes or even get rid of income tax, that might be a very interesting and inventive way of doing things. And the way that Trump talks about it, he makes it sound like this has just kind of been done before, but like a long time ago. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but based on what Trump is saying, wasn't there a time in the late 1800s, early 1900s where there was no income tax and the country was funded by tariffs? Correct me if I'm wrong. And as far as I understand, it wasn't until Jekyll Island, the meeting at Jekyll Island, and was it 1911? I could be wrong on the date there. That there was didn't the founding of the Federal Reserve happen soon after that meeting, and is that when the introduction of income tax occurred? I could be wrong on some of the details here, but anyway, maybe some food for thought, maybe something that might maybe inspire you to do some little researching into these things. But regardless, economically, trade-wise, probably fair to say maybe it's a bit of an interesting time right now, but I recommend try to maybe avoid a bit of the emotional hyperbole that people can sometimes often get whipped up into, and instead maybe just be like, you know what, let's see how this pans out. Maybe it's possible that it will work. Who knows? I think I'm maybe a bit more hopeful on it working. Well, I want it to work, that's my bias, but yeah, I'm no expert on whether it will or not, but